if you think about optimization, we always love the idea that we generate a huge ROI. But actually, ROI is only in execution, it's not in planning. So the planning should drive the ROI, but then you can only know if you are getting the ROI once the plan is executed. And if the plan is executed differently from what you have planned, then it's possible that you get zero ROI or negative ROI.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Decision Intelligence Laboratory podcast. Along with my co-host, Michael Watson, I'm here with today's guest, Dr. Filippo Foccaci. Filippo is the co-founder and CEO of DecisionBrain, a SaaS company with a heavy focus on complex optimization applications. On a personal note, I've been a visiting scientist / advisor and office resident at DecisionBrain in Paris during my sabbatical. And it's been a pleasure to get to know Filippo and his team over this time. And as I've gotten to know them, I've kind of seen their approach to optimization. And in the world that we live in with cloud computing and AI and things evolving really fast, it's been fun to watch how they've evolved their approach to optimization. That's something we're going to delve into today. Filippo, welcome. I'll throw it over to Mike to get us started.
Yeah, welcome, Filippo. Why don't you tell us how you first got involved with optimization?
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Vijay, for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here with you guys. How I got involved with optimization? Honestly, I got involved with optimization completely by chance. I started working in computer science engineering, and I chose computer science engineering because it was the closest engineering field to mathematics. And then towards the end of my studies, it's funny because I discovered more or less at the same time OR and AI. And because I was unable to make up my mind between the two, I really like the two. I decided to do my master thesis. I think this was in the 1996, in the combination of OR and AI technology, which AI at the time, the part of AI was focusing on was constraint logic programming. I don't know if you guys remember,
Yes.
based on Prolog.
Yes.
And so I did my master thesis in combining constraint logic programming with operation research. And so that was the really the start. And then from there, I had a chance to go to the US for work for Oracle for a year on an optimization project. And then I discovered iLog and Cplex at the time. And then I got a job offer from iLog. And that's where my career really started in the optimization field. I did my PhD there, and I still work in this field right now.
So when you joined iLog, it was already part of Cplex was already part of iLog. They're already combined.
They just acquired Cplex at the time. When I was using iLog working for Oracle, there was the announcement that iLog acquired Cplex. And actually, funny story is that because of that, I had a little bit of money, and I decided to buy some iLog stocks at the time because of the Cplex acquisition, and it was a good choice.
Well done. Well done.
Another little story for the people who listen to us, who have listened to the other podcast. You know who the person was who hired me at iLog?
Oh, yeah. I think we have two choices on here.
Yes.
I'll let
You have the choices.
Well, my guess is Harley.
Harley hired me. He was at the time managing the consulting organization in iLog US. So I've been knowing Harley for a very long time.
Well, and he spoke a bit on the podcast about the paper that you and he had recently written.
Yeah.
So, Filippo, at the outset, I gave my very short description of DecisionBrain. Do you want to let our audience know a little bit about the company and kind of correct any mistakes I may have made?
No. Your definition is perfectly fine and correct. So, for people who know about optimization, it's easy to define DecisionBrain because we focus on applying optimization and machine learning technology to solve planning and scheduling problems. And we have a platform for that. We'll talk about that later, but we really focus on applying optimization technology, machine learning technology for planning and scheduling for operational type of problems. So, which implies that we classify the domain in two big buckets in a way. On one side, we focus on workforce and maintenance optimization, strategic, tactical, operational level. And then the other side is a classical area of supply chain, manufacturing, and logistics. Can give you a couple of examples that I like and that people typically like. One example is one of our customer that we have been working with for the last over 10 years now is the Serco that manages the bike sharing scheme of London. So that's an operational real-time type of scheduling system that help Serco monitoring their bike sharing scheme 24/7 and optimize the way the operation are run.
Yeah, those are. I mean, the problems you've talked about are really interesting problems, and if you had to articulate what would you say is kind of the big strength in the marketplace of DecisionBrain or the superpower of the company's capabilities?
So to me, this superpower, if we have a superpower, there is no such a such a thing as superpower. It's always a combination of things. And if I need to summarize the way I see the strengths of DecisionBrain, it's really you can see it from the typical angle of people, technologies, and processes. And people is the most important one, really the most important one. We were able, and we've been very careful, and we are able to hire a very good team. And Vijay, you have met many of them. Mike, you have met some of them. One thing that I would insist that is this team of people, they are not superstars. And I'm saying this because sometimes in our field, there are some superstars. There are people who have a very big ego. At DecisionBrain, we try to give more focus on the people who can work in team. So team players rather than the best optimization guy ever. And so the team spirit is something that is super important at DecisionBrain, and that is to me is part of the success of the superpower of DecisionBrain. We have a very international team. People come from everywhere, from US, Asia, Africa, Europe, of course, and so on. A lot of French and Italians, as you can imagine, but it's really an international team.
That's a really good point that you made, Filippo, that I want to just make sure that we kind of articulate for the audience, is that if that collaboration across functional areas and competencies is in fact a superpower and a differentiator, that teamwork is actually a quantifiable asset for you. So thank you for calling that out.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And one thing that I say all the time is that one of the best advice that I had at the very beginning of DecisionBrain from a good friend who had an experience of creating a successful company, he told me, I'm not sure that the English terminology is the right one, but he said, you don't hire people with your head, you hire people with your belly, with your gut. You need to feel the person, and you need to make sure that the person can integrate your team. So that people is super important.
I know you guys solve pretty hard optimization problems, and I also know that, from your background, you know a little bit about constraint programming. Could you talk a little bit about how constraint programming and mixed integer programming kind of work together to solve some of these hard problems? I think, in the US, we don't tend to teach or think about constraint programming as much as people in Europe.
No, I think that we first of all, when we tackle a problem, we don't start with the technology. We start with the problem, which I hope everybody does that, but maybe it's not always the case.
Well worth repeating on this podcast. Very happy to have it said again.
Yes. So we start from the project problem. What is the problem statement? What is the goal? What is the business value we're trying to reach? And then the technology comes after. And when we look at technology, the two main technology we use are obviously mixed intelligence programming and constraint programming, even if actually it's not even true that we use those two, because often we complement them with heuristics that we build from scratch, or that we follow the path of we replicate what the good planners do. Obviously, local search and large neighborhood search, and a mix of constraint programming, mixed intelligence programming. On some problems, it's very clear which one is more suited. In other problems, we don't really know. And in others, again, it's a combination of both. The very first one that we did, the first project we did was with the port of Shenzhen, where we were solving a problem of optimizing load and discharge of containers to minimize what we consider what is called a yard clash or traffic jam. So basically, you are trying to decide how to load and discharge containers from vessels in such a way that you don't create traffic jams in the container terminal. And that's a problem that, in a very pragmatic way, the way we solved it was a sort of a column generation approach, where we generate with heuristics based on constraint programming some sequences, and then we use mixed intelligence programming to select the right mix of sequences. So that's we often use a little bit of both.
Excellent. So I wanted to dive in from there to because you guys have a distinct methodology and tool set that you've built, both the methodology and some of the tools over time. And from the people who are listening, you can call those things are on the DecisionBrain website as under GeneDB. And I'd love to get a sense, Filippo, of kind of how Gene came to be and then where the platform is going.
Yeah. So when we started the company, it was 2012, 2013. It was myself with a colleague of mine, Daniel Godard, and we started two people. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to do. We knew two things. One is that we are optimization guys, so if we create a company, we need to do something that we know how to do. So for me, what either I go and open a restaurant because I love cooking, or I do work in optimization. I selected optimization cooking for my retirement.
Got it.
And so we knew that we wanted to work on optimization, and we knew that we wanted to build software. We didn't want to be a services company, but we didn't have a great idea saying, "Hey, this is a fantastic product idea, and we get the funding and investors, and we go for it." So we started small as a services company, solving problems like the one I described on the port of Hong Kong. But because at the back of our mind was always, we want to build software, we started doing two things. And both are, in my opinion, one of the reasons of, or contribute to the reason of the success of DecisionBrain. Number one, we started creating standard methodologies and best practices. And I'll tell you why this is so important to me. And the second one, we started saying, if we have a project to do, and we need to write a piece of code, if we believe that this piece of code can be written in such a way that is generic and reusable, even if we spend more time, we do it. We don't charge the customer, but we do it. So we started creating components, reusable components, to solve small problems, or pieces of data model, or pieces of UI, and so on. And that then became eventually our DBGene platform. The standardization is also a big contribution of what became the DBGene platform, and what DecisionBrain became, because if you're able to standardize the way you work, it's like the Toyota way. You do the small things, so you improve them little by little, and you gain one big advantage for a small company. If you have up and down on resource requirement in terms of capacity on project, because some always have those issues, it's very easy to move people to help on another project if they know what to expect. If you do three different projects or 10 different projects and all of them are done in a different way, there is no way you can have a pool of resources and be effective in switching from one project to the other. If you do things in a way that is as standard as possible, then it's a lot easier to help each other, to work as a team again. So those are the two things, the initial step of this DBGene. Then obviously the set of reusable component became a platform or a development framework, we call it as you want, that became DBGene, which is really a factory of applications. So it's a way to, starting from a data model, for example, and so on, you push a button and you generate an application, simplifying it a little bit, but the vision is this. And then it became, we had the chance to work on complex operational problems for large enterprise. So DBGene, by necessity, became a very robust and very flexible platform because it had to deal with problems that were very large for large enterprises with enterprise type of architecture. And so that where the robustness of the platform came from is the necessity of providing software for big companies. And it's still today the big advantage of DBGene with respect to other platforms that exist in the market. It's really robust and really scalable.
What are some examples of companies who are using it 24/7 or using it in kind of real time? Do you have any good examples of that?
Yeah, so in real time, we have, but the buy sharing scheme example is one. So we get real time data feeds from the docking station. So we know when a docking station is broken or somebody pushed a button that says this doesn't work. We know when a bicycle is picked up or dropped off. And so all this information gets real time to the platform, and then we make decision based on the current status of those objects. Another one that I find super interesting is a recent project we are doing we are doing right now in facility management for for cleaning airports. It's super interesting. In airport, you have a lot of data feeds. It's unbelievable amount of data that is available in an airport. Now, if you want to plan activities for cleaning, for your cleaning agents, the way we do it is that we build a first plan overnight based on what we expect to the status of what we expect to have for the next day, so which flight arriving which gate and so on. And then during the day, we receive data feeds from passenger flows, for example, or people who push a button in the restroom saying this restroom is dirty, somebody needs to clean it. And all those information comes real time to our platform, and we change the schedule based on the type of information we receive. A flight is late. Then what happens if a flight is late? You have a lot of people staying static in front of the gate. The implication of this is the fact that if a lot of people stay static in front of the gate, you should not clean the gate because it's useless and you're wasting your time. As soon as people leave, then you need to clean more than what you have planned. It's an example of how this real-time data can be understood, interpreted, and trigger different type of decisions based on what you understand the situation is.
That's pretty cool because I guess in the bike sharing application, it really makes a system like that work because the demand and supply is imbalance and you end up with too many bikes in one place and none in another. And if you do this in real time, you can adjust and sort of make the system effective for the users.
Yeah, the other thing that I love about those type of very operational type of application is that if you think about optimization, we always love the idea that we generate a huge ROI. And sometimes we'd say, oh, it's a huge ROI because the objective function is saying that. Because when we calculate the KPI, we compute KPI and the plan is saving you millions of dollars. But actually ROI is only in execution, it's not in planning. So the planning should drive the ROI, but then you can only know if you are getting the ROI once the plan is executed. And if the plan is executed differently from what you have planned, then it's possible that you get zero ROI or negative ROI. So those type of operational planning and scheduling tools or operation and real-time systems are forcing you also to understand what are the actuals and see what is really happening in operation.
Yeah, there's a lot of insights kind of that are popping out of those things.
Mm, yeah.
Filippo, you've talked about DB as a way to kind of have reusable components and uh, facilitate people moving across projects and sharing resources. And you've talked about your team as being kind of relatively low on ego and strong on collaboration. It'd be great to understand kind of at a high level the roles and responsibilities of different types of team members on a typical optimization project, and then kind of from there how you're evolving the platform for the future.
Yeah. So in teams and responsibilities, we have basically three technical profile in a project. First one is what we call a business analyst. It's both a functional manager and a project manager. Yeah, typically it's you can have two people or one person, doesn't matter, but it's typically a functional consultant. The functional consultant, the goal of the functional consultant is to understand the business problem, to validate that whatever we do generates a business value that we promise to the customers, and play the role of a link between operations and the optimization scientists and the development team. So that's a role number one, which is a little bit a pivotal role in the organization. The second one is the OR or machine learning scientists, so the people who build the model or the algorithms on. Third role is a software developer. In the case of our project with BBGene, we have a lot of UI processes and components and functionality that are completely out of the box. You don't need any development. But then when you build complex solution, there is always some customization that is necessary. So to your question, how this platform, the Gene platform, is evolving towards Gene Online, what we're trying to do is if you have is the following. If you have a complex project, you need to have a good, a robust development team. Development team, again, optimization, UI development, backend development, integration, and so on. There are a lot of, and so if you have this and you need this, and you have a robust platform, you need to have a development team with a certain number of skills. So you need to have people with skills of optimization, people with skills of backend development, people with front-end development skills, people who know how to do deployment on the cloud. Now, for DecisionBrain, this is perfectly fine. And for companies similar to DecisionBrain, this is perfectly fine. But if you think about a lot of customers or a lot of companies that really focus on data science and optimization and machine learning, many of them do not have those type of skills. So they only have optimization skills, for example, and they can only do Python modeling or do modeling in Ample, for example. For those type of people, the Gene platform is not a good fit because they would have a barrier to entrance, a technology barrier that is too high. So one of the questions that we ask ourselves is, can we, I'm really convinced that our gene platform is the best in the world, but the number of people who can use it is relatively limited. And so the question that we ask ourselves is there anything we can do to make it available or digestible in a way to a much larger number of people? And so that's how Gene Online came, where one of the goals is to reduce the technical barrier to enable OR teams and data scientists to take advantage of exactly the same technology without having to know how to write code in Java or JavaScript, deploy on the cloud, and so on. And therefore, by doing this, we to extend the ecosystem of partners that we would have. The second goal, or the first one, depending on, I mean, there is no first and second. It's
Yes.
second. The other one is to continue focusing on our ability to deliver solution faster at a lower cost. So it's how can we reduce time to value? That's a real question that we ask to ourselves all the time. And so with Gene Online, we can reduce time to value dramatically, especially for simple application. For complex application, no, because you still need to do all the things that we do. But there are a lot of simple application out there where we can build a solution in a few days. Really, I mean, it's a real it's a real thing which we were not able to do before. So moving from ability to do project in a couple of weeks into doing project in 3-4 months, in doing project in 2 or 3 weeks can change everything.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, the minute in the environment we live in now, the minute anything goes past 1 quarter, people are wondering what they're getting for their money, and your ability to compress that time. And it sounds like, just I want to make sure I've heard it right. It sounds like that the Gene Online platform is enabling the business analyst or the modeler to essentially subsume a lot of the developmental components and execute those.
Yes, that's the idea. The idea is to have more and more components that can be used by simple configuration rather than customization. So that you don't need to do the deployment, which is relatively easy to do, but if you don't know how to do it, you're stuck. So really eliminating the technological barrier to make things super simple.
So I want to come back to a subtle point you made earlier that I think has a lot to say for how these things get implemented in practice, how you implement optimization. You mentioned when you stitch together a lot of different algorithms, sometimes you try to replicate what the best planners do. And I suspect that's not a pure optimization problem. Can you expand on that a little bit, like, and how that's valuable for getting these projects implemented?
So I agree. It's not an optimization problem. But it's super important. And the best example is what we did for Toyota. So Toyota, we did a project some years ago for the optimization of their inbound logistics. Toyota is, I mean, they do very good planning. I mean, they are well known, and there is a
Yes.
reason why they are well known. And so getting to a situation where the goal is, okay, can we improve the planning of Toyota and generate value is not an easy task. And there is a huge amount of knowledge in the way they do it manually today that it would have been a disaster not to use it. I mean, it would be a pity not to use it. So what we did was the following. The first phase of the project, we replicated the methodology and the heuristics that they were, or the rules, if you want, on how they were doing the planning. This had 2 huge benefits. Number one, in the first delivery, we delivered the solution, they push a button, and they see a result that they can recognize. So they are not lost. They say, okay, makes sense. That's exactly what we would have done. Obviously, we replicated what you typically do. So that made them in confidence, and this is super important in optimization project. The second advantage is that when you do apply optimization, you have a starting point, and that helps a lot. You don't start from scratch building a plan from scratch. You build the optimization with an incumbent that
Yes.
is quite good because it's coming from the heuristic of the plans.
And I bet you do a lot of learning in that process too.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think you undersold it a little bit. Replicating what current planners do is not so trivial. It's it can be a lot of work. There's a lot of hidden rules that you don't even know until you start digging in.
Yeah, but it's to me it's super important. We are doing this not only. I mean, the first time we did it was with Toyota. We are actually doing another situation as well. It's really super important.
Well,
Very nice.
we are contractually obligated to ask every one of our guests something about GenAI. So we've come to this point in the discussion. Um, everybody's talking about GenAI right now, Filippo, but I would love to have you share with the audience kind of what your thoughts were for your business and for DecisionBrain when ChatGPT came out and how those thoughts have evolved kind of over the last couple of years.
So when ChatGPT came out, I remember we had a meeting with actually everybody, where I basically said, "Look, I have no clue this is going to be, but we need to look at that. So we need to try to identify how to use it from different point of view, how to use it internally to improve our internal processes, so development, marketing, you name it, HR, all of them. So internal use of AI, how to use it in terms of technology. So we not named we basically dedicated one person who is very good in just playing with Gen AI and understand how the technology works. And then we started identifying a number of use cases where Gen AI plus decision support, decision making is a 1 + 1 = 3. And then we started working on those. And but the very first thing we tried to do was I asked this guy who is still working on Gen AI right now in our team, just look at the technology, play with it, do whatever you want to do. You know what he did? He actually created a little application that would listen to audio like this
Yes.
podcast and create a summary and actions and so on. Things that are when he told me what he was doing, I said, well, this is going to be worth nothing because everybody's going to do it. But it's super good that you're doing it because it forces you to learn the technology. And then we identify those 10 different, 10 or more different use cases, and we're working on those to how we can take advantage in AI to complement what we do.
Excellent.
Yeah, super thoughtful. So maybe we should wrap up with question about, you have a book, small course, blog posts, blogs that you like. Is there anything you recommend to our audience to listen to, learn more about the field?
For me, I'm relatively often on LinkedIn and I see things that are interesting. I listen to things that are connect. There is one guy who I think that what he does is always super insightful. His name is Yves Cazot. He's the CIO of Michelin, and he used to be a researcher in OR. When I was a PhD student, he was already relatively well known, and then he stopped doing optimization to become C-level in a very large organization in France. And his blogs and his thoughts on AI, uh, lean methodology, and so on are always super insightful to me. And one of the things where, for example, I agree with him 100%. He always talk about a system of systems. So AI is not just one technology, deep learning or optimization
Yeah.
or symbolic reasoning, and that's it. You're making super powerful. That's not what AI is. AI is the ability. Is first of all, it's a toolbox, and the ability to create systems of systems uh, by combining in a very smart way all this technology. So it's about hybridization of different methods and modularity also of how things can be put one next to the other, which is in a way what we're trying to do with decision support. I mean,
Yes.
the DBG platform is very modular. And the third point that he put emphasis on is control. So how do we validate? What are the safety guarantees? And how do we put the human in the loop? Because as was very well explained by Arlie in your podcast, for decision making, just using GenAI is not enough. It's too risky.
I think that is an area of great interest of mine, which is there's a lot of anxiety about GenAI eliminating jobs and putting people out of work. And I actually think that the question is a different one, which is what is our new capability as an organization with GenAI, and within that, how can we expand that? What roles can humans be assigned to that expand that capability? Because I think the potential is huge, but it's the technology will not do it for you. And in a way that's one of the great challenges for us as a field is to kind of guard the just making sure that as Harley talked about, that decisions are truly acceptable from a regulatory, from an operation, from a functional perspective, is not something we can guarantee with Gen AI alone. I've had a lot of hallucinating experiences recently that have me a little edgy on just how much review is required. Filippo, thanks so much. This has been a great session.
Thank you, Filippo. It's been great.
Thanks a lot. It was great chatting with you, and I hope to see you soon. Peace.
Excellent. Thank you.